I was raised by an Afro-Canadian mother with Caribbean heritage and a Ghanaian immigrant father. Growing up, I was surrounded by both of their cultures, but more so my dad's than my mom's. I ate Ghanaian food, was bombarded by Ghanaian music, and heard my dad speak Ghana's native language, Twi, over the phone. My mom also grew up in a home where she was constantly exposed to her culture. Both of her parents were from Grenada, and it also helped that she went to a church that was full of Caribbean immigrants and their descendants. So she grew up in an environment where she was constantly exposed to her culture. Sadly, this is not the case for many African American children in America today. Their history has been erased through centuries of America stripping them of their identities through slavery and racial oppression. As a result, I learned over and over again in school about things such as the civil rights movement and its headlining figures such as Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. I also learned a bit about Jim Crow and slavery here and there. One of the first things about Black history we tend to learn as students is about Black people having to go through centuries of enslavement and oppression before they achieved freedom. The problem is that when we learn Black history, that we tend to learn Black history from the hardships of Africans and their descendants as the starting point of Black history. At least I live in a state where this sort of instruction is mandated. And as a 2023 Education Week survey showed, 65% out of the 401 teachers who participated in the survey said that Black history was not a mandated topic in their state. When Black history is limited to the story of oppression, it puts Black people in this light. It paints Black people in this light of constant struggle that is characterized by suffering and death before they were able to achieve freedom. This is in contrast to teaching Black history by starting with how Black people were not only free, but they were shown as intellectuals, rulers, warriors, and storytellers who had rich histories and lived in complex and thriving societies. The cause of beginning the story of Black history with oppression is that Black students will feel disconnected from their past, as well as students from other backgrounds will only have a narrower understanding of Black history and encourage negative stereotypes that need to be challenged. I always knew growing up that people from Africa were taken away, but I never really knew what their life was before they were taken from Africa. I never really knew anything about their culture, traditions, or communities. I didn't learn anything about that really until my freshman year in Mr. Clemens' Humanities History class. It was there I learned about the three great West African kingdoms, Mali, Ghana, and Songhai. It was there that I learned about Africa's abundance of resources such as gold, salt, and gemstones. It was there that I learned that Mansa Musa, one of the wealthiest recorded individuals in human history, was dark-skinned like me, and that he created centers of learning where people from across the known world would flock to. When I learned this information, it gave me a sense of pride. It helped me find a missing piece of me that I felt like that I didn't know about. It helped reveal a missing piece of information to me. It gave me some reassurance in who I was, and I feel had I learned this information earlier, I wouldn't have felt as insecure around other kids that seem to be more connected to their culture than I was. When we learn about Black history, Instead of just starting with the story of oppression, we could say, yes, slavery did happen, and oppression, and black people were enslaved, and they were oppressed for many years. But before they were enslaved, they lived in vibrant, thriving societies. What if we created spaces in school where black children could not only celebrate who they are, but also learn about their history? For example, did you know that Christianity existed in Africa long before Europeans came to the continent? It goes back as far as 4 CE, when King Izana, the ruler of the kingdom of Aksum, converted to Christianity and was one of the first Christian states in the entire world. Or, in fact, 25% of African Americans today descend from Christian societies in Africa. Or that the Bantu people, who originated from West Africa and spread across the bottom half of the continent, created over 500 languages that over 350 million people speak today, including Swahili and Zulu, and led to the rise of great civilizations such as Great Zimbabwe. There are also studies that show that culturally responsive learning and ethnic studies courses can contribute to a student's success. A Stanford study conducted in January 2016 showed that students who were involved in an ethnic studies course that focused on cultural affirmation led to improved attendance and improved GPA. And another study conducted by assistant psychologist Christy M. Bird at the University of California, Santa Cruz, showed that culturally responsive learning practices that were used in the classroom helped students feel more confident in their racial identity. And it also showed that students who were confused about their racial identity or like facing turmoil about themselves and their identity was connected to lower engagement and bad grades. Some people may argue that a Black history course is just indoctrination or some sort of political stunt. But really, it's about restoring people's history who was lost. It's about kids being able to feel pride in themselves and know who they are and where they came from. Dr. Goldie Muhammad, the author of the books Cultivating Genius and Unearthing Joy, talks about principles that teachers should implement in their classrooms when dealing with culturally sensitive topics. They should make sure that their content focuses on the student's identity, as well as making sure that the students are able to understand others' identity. They should focus on being able to name, question, and confront oppression, and they should also make sure that the students are experiencing joy in what they're learning, and that the activities are engaging and connect to the students and who they are. Education should be accessible for everyone, no matter their background, especially in a country which ideals are built on freedom and the celebration of culture. Implementing Black history courses nationwide is one of the first steps that we can take towards this. Thank you.